Alabama holds more than Civil War tales and Southern charm. Its land hides ancient mysteries, from hidden tunnels and strange lights to mysterious relics and standing stones. These stories hint at a forgotten past that still lingers beneath the surface. Here's a look into Alabama's most intriguing ancient enigmas. The Bamahenge of Elberta. Tucked away on a quiet back road in southern Alabama, just a few miles from the Gulf Coast, there's something strange hiding among the pine trees. It's not marked by any signs. No gates, no gift shop, no crowds, just a ring of massive, weathered stones standing silently in the forest. It looks like Stonehenge, only this version is made of fiberglass. Welcome to Bamahenge. At first glance, it doesn't make sense. You're in rural Alabama, surrounded by woods and farmland, and suddenly you come across this eerie replica of one of the most famous ancient monuments in the world. It's one of those places that raises more questions than it answers. To be clear, Bamahenge isn't old. It was built in the early 2000s, but that doesn't mean it doesn't carry a certain strange energy. There's something about it, about the quiet, the symmetry, the way the light moves through the gaps between the stones that makes the whole scene feel otherworldly. For a second, it's like you've stepped out of Alabama and into some ancient, sacred ground. The stones look like they've been here forever, rough gray surfaces, mossy in spots towering above you. But they're hollow, fiberglass, each one anchored into the earth with hidden concrete and steel. Still, the layout is accurate. This isn't a rough imitation. The design mirrors the real Stonehenge in England. The size, the shape, the alignment with the summer solstice. Someone went to a lot of trouble to get it right. So why is this here, and who built it? It all goes back to a man named George Barber. He's a millionaire from Alabama with a passion for unusual projects. You might have heard of him if you're into racing. He's the guy behind Barber Motorsports Park near Birmingham. But beyond racing, George has a soft spot for big, bizarre outdoor art. And when he came across some land in the small town of Elberta, he saw an opportunity to create something memorable. That land belonged to Mark Klein, an artist and sculptor known for making wild, over-the-top fiberglass creations. His work includes everything from dinosaurs and wizards to haunted houses and roadside monsters. Klein had already installed a few giant dinosaurs on the Elberta property for Barber. Then Barber asked him, "Can you do Stonehenge?" Mark Klein said sure. He went back to his studio in Virginia, studied the original monument's design, learned the proportions, and started building each stone out of fiberglass. Once finished, the pieces were shipped to Alabama and installed one by one, carefully aligned to match the position of the summer sun. And just like that, Bamahenge came to life. Now, here's where things get a little weirder. At first, people saw it as a novelty, a cool thing to visit on a lazy afternoon. But after a while, visitors started noticing odd details. Some said their phones acted up near the stones. Others described a sense of calm, like the whole area was wrapped in some kind of invisible bubble. A few even claimed to feel energy like a charge in the air, especially during sunrise or sunset. Then the stories started. People began talking about strange lights in the sky, shadows moving between the trees, ghost sightings, UFOs, solstice rituals, pagans gathering in silence. Whether those tales are true or not doesn't really matter, because Bamahenge had already crossed a line. It stopped being just a replica. It became something more, a place where art and mystery blur together. What makes it so compelling is that it taps into something deep and old. Humans have always been drawn to stone circles. Whether it's Stonehenge in England, the megaliths of Brittany, or the ancient mound sites right here in Alabama, we keep building these structures. Maybe it's the geometry, maybe it's the way they line up with the stars, or maybe it's something we don't fully understand, something older than history. That's what gives Bamahenge its odd power. Yes, it's modern. Yes, it's made of fiberglass. But the arrangement is real. The layout speaks the same silent language the ancients used, a language of sun and stone and shadow. It doesn't matter that it's artificial. Standing inside the circle, you still feel the weight of the design, especially during golden hour. When the sun hits just right, the light slices through the circle in a way that feels intentional, almost sacred. Even knowing it's just a replica, it's hard not to pause and wonder what the original Stonehenge was really for. A calendar? A temple? A gravesite? A message to the stars? Bamahenge doesn't give you answers, but it definitely gets you asking questions. And the weirdness doesn't stop at the circle. If you wander the woods around the site, you'll start to notice other odd things. A giant pink dinosaur, for instance, or a fiberglass knight standing quietly in the brush. Bits and pieces of fairy tales scattered between the trees. Some feel like jokes, others like dream fragments. The deeper you go, the more surreal it all becomes. There are even rumors that this part of Alabama sits on so-called ley lines, invisible energy paths that some believe connect sacred places across the earth. It's not something science recognizes, but the idea keeps coming up in places like this. Places that feel off. People say animals sometimes avoid the area, that birds get quiet, that the air itself feels different. Maybe it's just suggestion, maybe it's something else. Locals have mixed opinions. Some think Bamahenge is just a fun roadside stop. Others say weird things started happening after it was built. Pets disappearing, strange weather patterns, lights flashing in the sky. There's no proof of anything. Just a slow trickle of stories that build up over time, like moss on stone. What's not in doubt is that Bamahenge has become a symbol of Alabama's odd side. It's not just a roadside attraction, it's a curiosity, a conversation starter, a mystery hidden in plain sight, and somehow, even in a world full of noise and information, this silent ring of fiberglass stones manages to hold on to its secrets. If you visit today, you'll still find it wide open and easy to miss. No signs pointing the way, no fees, no crowds, just a dirt road winding through the trees. And then there it is, rising out of the earth like it's always been there. Quiet, still, waiting. People come for different reasons. Some want a selfie, some bring their kids. Others come to stand in the center of the circle and look up at the sky, feeling something they can't quite explain. Maybe it's just art. Maybe it's a tribute to something ancient. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something more. A little mystery in the middle of the woods. A place where time bends slightly, and imagination takes the lead. Bamahenge reminds us that you don't need to go far to find wonder. Sometimes it's just a short drive off the highway, hidden among the pine trees. The tunnels beneath Montgomery. Montgomery, Alabama. When you think of this city, you probably picture the civil rights landmarks, the old red brick buildings, or maybe the Alabama River winding past downtown. But underneath all of that, beneath the streets, the shops, the churches, there are whispers of something hidden, a network of underground tunnels, not shown on any modern maps, not marked with signs, just passed around in stories, rumors, and strange discoveries. It sounds like an urban legend, and maybe that's all it is. But the more you dig, sometimes literally, the more these stories start to take shape. Montgomery is one of the oldest cities in the Deep South. It's layered, built over itself again and again. Set right along the river, the city was once a major shipping hub for cotton, lumber, and enslaved people. The layout of downtown still reflects those early days, with old warehouses, banks, and alleys that once pulsed with commerce, and more grimly, human suffering. That's where the first tunnel stories begin. Some say these underground passages were used during the days of slavery, connecting holding cells to auction houses or leading from basements to riverboats. They would have been hidden from view, either to keep enslaved people out of public sight or to quietly move them around without risk of escape. No official documents confirm this, but local preservationists have uncovered strange clues. Sealed up arches under buildings, oddly placed crawl spaces, bricked-in doorways that lead nowhere. Things that make you wonder what else might be down there. One of the most talked about buildings is the Winter Building on Dexter Avenue. It's best known as the place where the telegram to start the Civil War was sent. But people who've worked there say the basement has bricked-over doorways, arched like tunnels. Other sites come up in conversation too. The old Crest Building, the Alabama Department of Archives, and even several historic churches, all said to have mysterious, sealed-off spaces beneath them. So what are they? Some say they're just part of the city's old drainage system. Montgomery, being close to the river, needed ways to manage flooding. That theory makes sense until you look at the design. These aren't basic utility tunnels. Some of them have stairs, iron doors, stone floors wide enough to walk through, not exactly what you'd expect for draining stormwater. Then there's the fact that people have actually found them. Contractors working on downtown renovations have stumbled across strange underground spaces more than once. In one restaurant basement, workers uncovered a hidden corridor behind a false wall. It didn't go far, just a few steps before it was filled with dirt, but it was clearly built with care. Same brick as the street above, same worn stone steps. It wasn't a fluke. In another case, a maintenance team found what looked like an old shaft beneath a cellar door. It seemed to lead across an alley to another building, but no one could say why. There was no record of it in the plans. No one claimed to know it was there, and that's part of the mystery. There's no official map of what's under Montgomery, no central blueprint. If there are tunnels, they're undocumented, disconnected, and sealed off. But the stories keep surfacing. During Prohibition in the 1920s, Montgomery had its fair share of hidden bars and backroom deals. Speakeasies popped up across the city, especially downtown. Some say the tunnels were repurposed during that era, used to move alcohol, dodge raids, and keep the liquor flowing under the radar. It's a believable twist. Bootleggers were creative, and basements often served double duty. If you were trying to run an illegal bar, a hidden tunnel between buildings would have been a smart move. Others tie the tunnels back to the Civil War. Montgomery was the first capital of the Confederacy, at least for a little while. During that time, the city's buildings were quickly converted for military use. Hotels became barracks, banks held supplies, and according to old stories, key sites had escape routes built beneath them, just in case Union troops showed up. One legend says Confederate officers used a tunnel to flee the Capitol building, heading toward the river during a nighttime raid. Again, nothing on paper proves it, but the story has stuck around for generations. Then there are the rumors with a different kind of mystery. Montgomery has several old Masonic lodges, some over 100 years old. Across the South, stories swirl about secret Masonic chambers, rituals, and underground meeting rooms. Some locals believe the tunnel layouts under certain blocks of downtown are too precise to be random, that maybe, just maybe, they were part of a larger symbolic design that's since been broken up by time and construction. But that's where the trail starts to go cold. Most of these supposed entrances are either locked up behind steel doors or completely filled in. In some cases, they've been built over and forgotten. In others, they're avoided. City officials rarely talk about the tunnels, and when they do, it's usually to say there's no solid evidence of a full underground network. But you have to wonder, why the silence? Part of it might be safety. Old underground structures can collapse. They're dangerous, especially if people go looking for them without permission. But part of it might be something deeper. This is a city that's had to reckon with a painful past. If those tunnels were tied to the slave trade, uncovering them might open wounds that are still healing. It's not just about bricks and dirt, it's about memory. That hasn't stopped people from trying to find out more. A handful of local researchers have pieced together old fire insurance maps, cross-referenced historic property records, and even done small surveys. What they've found is mostly circumstantial: strange gaps between building foundations, misaligned basements, and sealed doorways in places where no door should be. It's not enough to prove a tunnel system, but it's enough to make you think twice. So where does that leave us? For now, Montgomery's tunnels remain a mystery. Maybe they were real, used and then forgotten. Maybe they're just misunderstood pieces of the city's old infrastructure. Or maybe they're a mix of both, real passages that picked up myths over time. In any case, they've become part of the city's lore, passed down through stories, whispered during walking tours, mentioned quietly among locals who've heard just enough to believe. If you ever find yourself in Montgomery, walk downtown at night. Wait until the streets are quiet and the foot traffic fades. You'll start to notice how much of the old city is still here. The worn brick, the fading signs, the echoes of footsteps from generations past. And maybe if you stop in just the right spot, you'll feel it, that faint awareness that something's below you, something unseen, something waiting. Whether it's a real tunnel, a sealed doorway, or just the weight of history pressing up through the sidewalk, there's no denying it. Montgomery holds secrets. Some we know, some we don't, and some we're still not quite ready to uncover. Until then, the story of the tunnels lives in the space between history and rumor, a quiet reminder that the past doesn't always stay buried. The mystery of the Key Cave skeleton. In the limestone hills of northwestern Alabama, just outside the city of Florence, there's a cave hidden beneath fields of cotton and patches of brush. Most people drive past without giving it a second glance. From the outside, it's just a dark opening in the rock. Nothing fancy, nothing marked. Locals call it Key Cave, and while it looks quiet and ordinary, what was found deep inside has left people puzzled for decades. Back in the early 1970s, a group of researchers was surveying the area when they came across something strange. Deep inside the cave, far from the entrance, they discovered a human skeleton. It wasn't in a grave or wrapped in any kind of covering. No signs of burial, no artifacts, just bones, undisturbed and tucked into a hard-to-reach spot in the dark. The question started right away. Who was this person? Why were they inside a cave? And how long had they been lying there, hidden from the world? The bones were old, really old. Early estimates suggested they could be between 500 and 800 years old, meaning this person lived and died long before European settlers ever arrived in the area. Long before Florence existed, long before Key Cave was even given a name. Archaeologists believe the remains belong to a Native American individual, most likely from the Mississippian culture, a group known for building massive earth mounds, crafting detailed pottery, and trading across large distances. They lived all over the southeast, including what's now northern Alabama. Their villages lined the river valleys, especially near the Tennessee River. But something about this find didn't fit. Key Cave isn't known as a burial site. It's not like other caves in the southeast that were sometimes used for ceremonial burials. There were no signs of rituals, no pottery shards, no grave goods, nothing to suggest this was a sacred space. And the way the skeleton was positioned didn't match typical Mississippian burial practices. It didn't look like the body had been placed there with care. It looked more like the person had entered the cave on their own and never came back out. That opened the door to all kinds of theories. Some people think the person was hiding. Maybe they were running from danger, an enemy tribe, wild animals, or even early European explorers during the first periods of contact. Maybe they thought the cave was a safe place to wait out the threat, only to get trapped or injured and eventually die inside. Others suggest something more unsettling. What if the person had been left there intentionally, as a form of punishment or exile? Some native cultures viewed caves as powerful symbols, places of transition, of separation from the living world. Could this have been a kind of social banishment? There's also the possibility it was an accident. Key Cave has deep interior chambers and sharp drop-offs. Even experienced cavers need to be careful. Maybe the person got lost inside or fell into one of the lower chambers and couldn't find their way out. The region is known for sinkholes and underground channels, many of which are still unmapped. It's not hard to imagine someone exploring and getting stuck in a part of the cave that was impossible to escape. But here's the frustrating part: we don't really know. The skeleton was never studied in depth. In the 1970s, archaeological regulations weren't as strict as they are now. There wasn't a lot of documentation, and no detailed scientific analysis of the remains. Some say the bones were later reburied. Others believe they were left in place. Either way, the records are vague, and no one can say for sure what happened after the initial discovery. Adding to the mystery is the fact that Key Cave is now protected land. It's home to one of the rarest species on the planet, the Alabama cavefish. This tiny, blind fish exists nowhere else in the world, and because of that, the cave has been placed under federal protection. That means no digging, no exploring, and no entering parts of the cave system without special permission. Even scientists face heavy restrictions. So for now, the cave and whatever secrets it holds remains off limits. All we're left with are a few scattered notes, some blurry memories from the people who were there at the time, and a lot of unanswered questions. Who was this person? What brought them into the darkness of Key Cave? And how many other stories like this are hidden just below the surface? Northern Alabama is full of caves. The limestone landscape is riddled with cracks, sinkholes, and underground hollows. Some have been mapped, many haven't. In the early 20th century, a lot of these caves were looted, long before cultural protection laws were in place. Artifacts and remains were taken, scattered, or destroyed. It's possible that other stories, just like the one in Key Cave, have already been lost. And then there's the way people talk about the cave. Older residents of the area say they've always felt something strange about that land. Hunters sometimes report odd echoes near the cave's entrance, or the sensation of being watched. Farmers who worked the surrounding fields back in the 1940s and 50s told their children not to go near the cave, long before anyone officially knew there was a skeleton inside. Is that just local superstition? Or is it the kind of old warning passed down for reasons nobody remembers? There's even a story told quietly and rarely that a second skeleton was found in the cave years before the official discovery. No records, just a rumor passed from one generation to the next. Maybe someone stumbled onto something and kept it quiet. Maybe the story got distorted over time, or maybe there's a grain of truth in it that no one has ever been able to confirm. Whatever the case, Key Cave holds its silence. Today, the land above the cave is part of the Key Cave National Wildlife Refuge. It's peaceful, rolling fields, patches of forest, and the occasional visitor walking a trail. Most people who come here don't know what lies beneath. There's no sign or marker pointing to the mystery. No mention of the skeleton, no explanation, but the cave is still there, hidden, dark, unchanged. Somewhere deep inside, one person's story ended, a story that was never written down, a life that left no name, no artifacts, no obvious answers, just bones in the dark. And that's what makes it so haunting. Because even though we don't know who they were, we do know this: they were real, they lived, they walked the same hills, saw the same sky, felt the same river breeze, and now Their final chapter rests in a place most people will never see. Maybe that's where it belongs, or maybe one day someone will piece together the clues. But until then, the mystery of Key Cave will stay just that, a quiet question buried deep in Alabama's hills. A reminder that history isn't always written in books. Sometimes it's waiting in the ground, in the silence, hoping someone will listen. The Dismals Canyon Lights. Tucked away in the forests of northwest Alabama is a place that doesn't feel like it belongs to the modern world. The trees here grow taller and closer together. The trails twist through moss-covered rock walls, and waterfalls echo through narrow sandstone gorges. It's quiet, still, almost like time forgot this place. Locals call it Dismals Canyon, and once the sun goes down, it becomes one of the strangest and most magical spots in the South. During the day, the canyon looks like something out of a lost world. You'll find natural bridges, massive boulders, and winding stone paths that dip and rise like the floor of an ancient temple. Everything feels a little oversized, a little too still. It's easy to imagine dinosaurs walking through the mist, but it's at night that Dismals Canyon really comes alive, though not in a way you'd expect. As darkness settles in, tiny blue-green lights start to appear along the rock walls and mossy ledges. At first they look like faint specks of starlight, scattered low to the ground. Then more appear, flickering along the damp canyon walls. Before long, the darkness is dotted with hundreds of soft glowing points, like cool blue fireflies frozen in place. These aren't fireflies though. Locals call them the Dismal Lights. Scientists call them Dismal Lights. They're actually the larval stage of a rare fly, found in only a few places on Earth, mainly in parts of Australia, New Zealand, and right here in Alabama. The glow they give off is bioluminescent. It's how they attract food. The insects themselves are tiny, smaller than a grain of rice, but in large numbers their lights turn the canyon into something out of a dream. Standing there in the dark, surrounded by those glowing dots, there's a strange calm that settles over you. You stop talking, you stop moving, and for a few minutes, you just take it in. It doesn't feel like something you're supposed to explain. It just feels right. But long before scientists had a name for them, people around here already had stories. Generations of Native American tribes, including the Cherokee and Chickasaw, believed the canyon was sacred. They spoke of spirit lights that appeared after sunset, signs of ancestors, watchers, or something older that lived in the stone. Some tribal stories warned that the lights weren't to be trusted. They said wandering too far into the canyon at night might lead you somewhere you couldn't come back from. Not everyone heeded that warning. Later, early settlers passing through in the 1800s brought their own ideas. Some saw the lights as omens. Others thought they were signs of the devil, strange echoes of old-world tales about will-o'-the-wisps and ghostly lanterns that led travelers astray. There were rumors of people disappearing, strange shapes watching from the cliffs, even livestock vanishing after getting too close to the canyon's edge. And then there's the name, Dismals Canyon. It sounds ominous, and honestly it kind of is. The name comes from an old British word, dismals, used back in the 1600s to describe dark, gloomy swamps. When surveyors first explored this part of Alabama, they thought the canyon was beautiful, sure, but also eerie and unsettling. That name stuck, and the stories kept coming. What makes Dismalites so fascinating is how rare and fragile they are. They can only survive in places with very specific conditions: cool temperatures, high humidity, mossy stone, and total darkness. If the climate shifts even slightly, if it gets too warm, too dry, or too bright, they die off. And once they're gone, it can take years for them to return. That's part of what makes Dismalites Canyon so special. It's not just a place you visit, it's a place that protects something delicate. But the canyon's mystery goes deeper than just glowing bugs. There's something about the way the space feels, something hard to describe unless you've walked through it yourself. The air is heavy, damp. Sound doesn't travel like it should. The sandstone cliffs seem to swallow noise. You could be 10 feet away from someone and barely hear their footsteps. Even in daylight, there are shadows that never fully lift, and at night, those shadows feel deeper, older. People who've walked the trails after dark sometimes describe feeling watched. They talk about cold spots with no wind, or hearing whispers that stop when they turn around. One woman said she felt a hand touch her shoulder, only to find no one behind her. Another said she saw movement behind a rock, then caught a glimpse of a pale face, but when she called out, no one answered. One of the more well-known stories comes from a night tour years ago. A family was hiking with a guide when their youngest child pointed toward a large boulder and said, "There's a man back there." The guide looked. The parents looked. No one was there. But later, when the family reviewed their photos, one shot showed a faint, misty shape exactly where the child had pointed. The figure couldn't be explained, and it's still passed around quietly by people who work at the canyon. And then there's the case of the hikers who vanished. In the 1980s, a couple reportedly entered the canyon on foot and never came back. Their car was found parked nearby. Their footprints led partway into the trail, and then stopped. There was no sign of a struggle, no bodies, no clues. Some believe they slipped into a hidden pool or fell into a crevice. Others think they were taken by the canyon itself, lost in a space that doesn't always play by the rules. Today, Dismals Canyon is a national natural landmark. It's privately owned but open to the public. You can visit during the day, hike the trails, camp overnight. But the big draw, of course, is the night tours. That's when the Dismalites glow the brightest, usually in late spring and early summer when the humidity is high. During the tour, flashlights are banned. You walk in near total darkness, guided only by the glow of the insects and a few lanterns carried by your guide. It takes a while for your eyes to adjust, but once they do, you start to see the glow. First 1 dot, then 3, then 50. The walls light up like stars against black stone. You hear the soft shuffle of shoes, the low sound of water running nearby, and then nothing. Just quiet. Deep, natural, untouched quiet. Everyone reacts differently. Some cry, some smile, and don't speak. Some try to take pictures, but it never looks the same in a photo. The real thing being surrounded by something so small, so old, so strange. It leaves an impression, one that sticks with you. The staff here take the experience seriously. Visitors are asked not to touch the rocks or try to collect insects. There are signs reminding people to stay on the trail, to move slowly, and to respect the space. It feels less like a tourist attraction and more like a living shrine, a reminder that we don't have to understand everything to appreciate it. Dismals Canyon isn't famous, and maybe that's a good thing. It doesn't need crowds or flash. It's just a patch of forest in Alabama where something rare still survives, a place where folklore and science meet in the dark, where children still point to shadows and whisper, and where for just a little while you're reminded that not everything has been explained. So if you ever find yourself near Phil Campbell, Alabama, take the turn, wait for nightfall, step into the canyon, and let your eyes adjust. And when the glow appears, quiet, slow, like stars coming out, don't rush it. Just stand there, listen, breathe, because in a world that moves too fast, Dismals Canyon is one of the few places where wonder still lingers in the dark. The Alabama Standing Stones. Scattered through the forests and quiet pastures of central Alabama, you'll find something a little odd. Tall, upright stones that seem just a bit out of place. Some are standing alone on remote ridges. Others sit in small, quiet groups, half buried in the earth, weathered by time. You won't find plaques nearby. Most aren't on any map, but they've stirred up a quiet mystery over the years. Are these ancient standing stones? And if they are, who put them here and why? At first glance, they might look like nothing special, just big, upright rocks, jagged, rough, and shaped by nature. But if you walk up to one, something feels off. The angles are sharper than you'd expect. Some have flat sides or look like they were placed on purpose. A few even line up with sunrise or sunset in strangely precise ways. Not in your face, but enough to make you stop and think, is this more than just coincidence? Now let's be clear, Alabama isn't exactly known for ancient stone monuments. When you think of standing stones, you picture Stonehenge or the ones in France and Korea, not the backwoods of the American South. But over the years, these stones have quietly grabbed the attention of curious hikers, local historians, and amateur researchers. The question keeps coming up, what exactly are these things doing here? One of the most talked about sites is in Blount County, just north of Birmingham. Deep in the woods, tucked along a ridge, there's a formation of stones set in a semicircle. They stand upright, a few feet apart, each one nearly 6 feet tall, and sunk firmly into the ground. There are no signs pointing you there, no official trails, but the people who find it often describe the same thing, a strange stillness in the air. The forest goes quiet, the trees seem to shift even without a breeze, and when the sun rises, it slips perfectly through one specific gap in the stones and lands, right on a central slab. It's subtle, but it's hard to believe it's just random. So what's going on here? Most mainstream archaeologists say it's probably just nature at work. Alabama's full of ancient sandstone and limestone. Over time, those rock layers can split and fracture, forming upright shapes especially after earthquakes or erosion. You'll see tall, blade-like stones like this all across the region, and in most cases, they are just geological leftovers, but that doesn't explain all of them. Some of these stones are found standing straight up on flat ground, with no sign of a rock formation nearby. No cliffs, no hills, no outcrops, just one tall stone in the middle of nowhere. Take the one in Cosa County. Locals call it the Sentry. It's a tall, smooth stone sitting all by itself in an open field with nothing else like it for half a mile. It's been there longer than any fence or road nearby. Farmers used to just build around it. They didn't touch it just in case, and that just-in-case feeling isn't unusual. In older stories passed down by early settlers and by Native American communities like the Creek and Cherokee, stones like these were sometimes seen as boundary markers between the physical world and something deeper. They weren't to be moved. Some were called spirit stones or watchers. They marked sacred places, burial areas, or ceremonial paths. Not decorations, signs, and the land around them, often left alone. There's also the idea that these stones could have been early solar markers, basic tools for tracking the sun's path across the year. Similar setups have been found in parts of Georgia and Tennessee, upright stones used to mark planting seasons or sacred dates. Doesn't sound too far-fetched when you think about it. The ancient Mississippian cultures here in Alabama built massive mound complexes with solar alignments. If they could design whole towns around the sun, it's not a stretch to imagine smaller groups marking those same paths with stones. But here's the catch, no one's really studied them seriously. Most of the stones are on private land, others are ignored because people assume they're just natural, so there hasn't been a full survey or archaeological dig to document them all. A few independent researchers have stepped in, hand-drawing maps using compasses, even flying drones to look for patterns. But without university funding or official support, they're kind of working in the dark. And that opens the door for more speculative theories. Some people think these stones might be evidence of early European contact long before Columbus. Maybe Celtic explorers or even Norse travelers who somehow made it inland and left a few cryptic markers. There's no hard evidence for that, but every so often someone claims to find carvings, spirals, crosses, symbols that look like writing. Others believe the stones could be tied to ancient rituals, maybe fertility rites, burial ceremonies, or star-watching events. And then you have the more fringe ideas, ley lines, alien contact, remnants of a forgotten civilization. Many stones were probably knocked down or buried without anyone realizing they were special. Some were turned into fence posts. Others were just cleared away because they were in the way. No photos, no records, just gone. Today, a few still stand, quiet, unnoticed, weathered by time. If you want to find one, you'll probably have to ask a local. Hikers, farmers, or backyard historians sometimes know where to look, but you won't find brochures or guided tours. These stones are hidden, sometimes on purpose, and maybe that's the way it should be. In a world where everything is documented, photographed, tagged, and tracked, these standing stones remain something different, something old, something that resists explanation. They remind us that not everything has to be solved, that the land still holds secrets. If you're willing to look slowly, and deep in the heart of Alabama, something ancient might still be watching, silent, steady, and forgotten by time. Whether they're natural formations, sacred symbols, or remnants of a lost tradition, these stones ask a quiet question. What if we've missed something right in front of us, something that never left but that we stopped seeing, until we look again? The Redstone Arsenal Relics. Just outside Huntsville, Alabama, past the defense checkpoints and industrial buildings of one of America's most important military sites, there are whispers of something older, stranger, and still largely unexplained. Beneath the high-tech labs and missile testing ranges of Redstone Arsenal, workers and researchers have uncovered fragments of a different kind of history. Not missiles, not satellites, but artifacts, buried relics that don't seem to belong to the world we thought existed here. It's one of those stories that gets passed around quietly, half rumor and half reality. But it starts with a fact. Long before Redstone Arsenal became a hub for rocket development and space science, the land it sits on was home to centuries of human history, including some of the oldest known settlements in Alabama. Before the government acquired this land during World War II, it was rural farmland, dotted with small communities, Native American mounds, and quiet stretches of forest. Even before European colonists arrived, the area along the Tennessee River had been a natural corridor for indigenous cultures going back thousands of years. This region was part of a larger Mississippian network, complex societies known for mound building, trade routes, and advanced agriculture. They left behind pottery, tools, and ceremonial structures, but much of it was never fully studied before the land was turned over to the military. That's where the mystery begins. During the early 1940s, when the U.S. Army started clearing land for what would become Redstone Arsenal, workers reportedly uncovered burial mounds, stone tools, and pottery fragments scattered across the site. Some accounts mention large stone slabs inscribed with odd markings, possibly petroglyphs or proto-writing. Others described copper objects or strange ornamental pieces, unlike anything typically associated with southeastern indigenous tribes. In those early years, documentation was inconsistent. The country was focused on the war. Speed was the priority. Building the facilities, clearing the land, and relocating residents. According to local historians, many of the artifacts were either destroyed in the process or quietly stored away without public notice. Some were handed off to the Smithsonian. Others, it's believed, were kept in storage on the base itself. A few archaeologists who worked on later surveys in the area have gone on record saying entire mound complexes were flattened during the build-out of the arsenal. One researcher, who asked not to be named, claimed in an interview that bulldozers accidentally opened up a burial site containing artifacts that didn't match anything from standard Mississippian culture. No photos were released, no official report was filed, and yet the story keeps surfacing. Then there's the matter of the stone tablets. These appear in several versions of the legend, flat stones pulled from the soil during excavation, covered in odd symbols that no one could identify. One former contractor claimed he saw one of the tablets himself in the 1970s, locked away in a warehouse on base. He described it as slate-colored, with a series of markings that looked more like geometric patterns than writing: circles, crosses, branching lines, and spirals. Was it real? Was it just someone's misidentified field stone? Hard to say. But that's how stories like this survive, quiet, persistent, and hard to fully shake. As Redstone Arsenal grew in the post-war years, it became a centerpiece of the American space program. This is where Wernher von Braun and his German rocket team were brought after World War II as part of Operation Paperclip. The Saturn V rocket, the same one that sent Apollo to the moon, was developed here. It's a place built on cutting-edge science and tightly held secrets. But as the high-tech labs expanded above ground, more discoveries were made below. In the 1980s and 90s, routine construction for new facilities reportedly turned up more pottery, more tools, and more unexplained objects. By this time, cultural preservation laws had caught up, so archaeologists were brought in. A few small surveys were published, confirming the presence of pre-contact indigenous sites on base land. But the details were vague. Most of the findings were labeled typical of late woodland or Mississippian cultures, and then the records went silent. What wasn't typical, though, were the persistent rumors of non-native materials, including carved stone spheres, copper implements with unusual shapes, and even one supposed figurine made of a dark, volcanic-looking rock that doesn't occur naturally in Alabama. There's never been an official statement about any of those items. No images, no catalog, just stories passed along by workers, archaeologists, and the occasional former base employee who decided to talk after retirement. It's easy to dismiss these tales. Redstone is, after all, a place full of rumors. People love to tell stories about secret experiments and hidden bunkers, but the relics, the ones tied to the earth, not rockets, feel different. They hint at something older than even the oldest official records, something that may have been destroyed or buried in the name of progress. Then there's the theory that the area around Redstone wasn't just a settlement, but a ceremonial center, a kind of sacred zone for the people who lived here centuries ago. The Tennessee River provided water, fish, and fertile land. The surrounding ridges offered natural defense and visibility, and the proximity to other mound sites, like those at Moundville, Florence, and Decatur, suggests the region may have been part of a much larger ritual or political network. If that's true, then the destruction of those mounds and artifacts during Redstone's construction wasn't just an archaeological loss, it may have erased the central node of a forgotten cultural system. Today, Redstone Arsenal is still an active military installation, home to U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command, and several NASA facilities. Access is restricted. The public can't just wander in and explore the grounds. But the land underneath, the land that came long before the concrete and security gates, is still there, quiet, holding its secrets. Some preservationists have pushed for further surveys. They want a complete archaeological map of the region, but funding is scarce, and given the classified nature of the site, even non-military researchers face steep hurdles. Until that changes, most of what we know comes from fragmentary reports, whispers, and the rare moments when history literally rises from the dirt during construction. You won't find signs or plaques marking any ancient sites within Redstone's borders. There's no museum exhibit dedicated to the tablets, the figurines, or the mystery objects that people still talk about in hushed tones. But if you talk to the right locals, or retired workers who once walked the grounds with a clipboard in one hand and a shovel in the other, they'll tell you something old is buried out there, under the runways and radar stations. And maybe that's the strangest part of all, that one of America's most advanced research installations sits on top of something ancient, possibly sacred, and largely unexplored. A forgotten past, hidden beneath a future built on rockets and warfare. Whether the Redstone Arsenal relics ever see the light of day again, depends on whether anyone's willing or allowed to look. Until then, they remain part of Alabama's quiet underground, a mystery sealed beneath concrete, protocol, and time.